Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. And welcome to this, the second in my series of special films on the Paris attacks. Now, a lot has happened since I made the last film. It's now Friday the 20th of November. It is 1 week since this terrible event happened. 1 week ago this evening. And a lot has gone on. There's been a lot of updates that I have to give you. Not least, I'll talk about the police raid in Saint Denis later. But Salah Abdel Salam, he's still on the run. This guy, he's the main suspect. There's photos of him everywhere. He's still at large. The public has been warned not to approach him. He's armed and dangerous, etc. And 115,000 police officers have been drafted in on this state to work exclusively on this state of emergency. There are 1,500 troops on the streets of Paris. The army is mobilised in other parts of the country as well. President Hollande has vowed to destroy ISIS, and his forces have carried out retaliatory strikes on various areas of the Middle East where ISIS are operating. The brother of Salah Abdel Salam has been released without charge. He denies all involvement and there's no evidence against him. So the hunt goes on. At the time I'm filming this, there may be some updates later, but at the time I'm filming this, Salah Abdel Salam has not been apprehended. Now, I'm going to go into a few things in the course of this film, but first of all, if you recall in the last video, I made a prediction. I said that when a photo was published, or any kind of image was published, of the ringleader of the gang that carried out this attack, that he would have certain features. He would have a sinister sounding name. He would have a black beard. He would have a scowl on his face. And he would have evil eyes. Well, shall we have a look at him?
And here he is. Does he have a sinister sounding name? Abdul Hamid Abayoud. Check. Does he have a black beard? Check. Does he have a scowl on his face? Check. Does he have evil eyes? Check. Interestingly, he has been reported as dead. The police apparently shot him. That is, if he ever existed at all, or whether he's just another Ogilvy, like Jihadi John probably is. But apparently it's been reported that he's been killed, and he's been formally identified by his fingerprints. He was accompanied by a woman who was actually his cousin, who blew herself up with a suicide vest, just like the ones that were used over the course of the attack in Paris. Now they're going to have to go by DNA evidence with her, because basically there's nothing left of her. I mean, they can't even check her dental records, which means either her teeth are destroyed or they've been blown so far apart that her jawbone basically is not intact, which means her teeth are all over the place and they can't use that. That's how devastating these weapons are when they explode actually on your body. So again, you've got to ask that question. It brings us back to the passport. The passport at the Stade de France Stadium, how did that survive? You see, I'm hoping I'm not the only one who's going to be asking these questions. Other people are going to go, hang on a minute. Didn't you just say you'd find a passport? And they're going to remember, and it's going to occur to them that they've been had. And this is all a huge scam. And it is a scam. I have no doubt about it. I don't think there's any room for doubt now after everything that's happened and the information that has been gathered. Now, I'm going to say a little bit more about my continuing deterioration in the relationship I have with some of my former Facebook friends, but suffice to say that, as I think I explained in the previous film, that there is a tendency now within the truth movement that is in denial that this is a false flag attack, and they want to believe the official story. I have been accused by this tendency of jumping to the conclusion that it is a false flag attack. Now, I don't think I have done that. I mean, I addressed in the previous film how I was also accused of not caring and being disrespectful to the victims and their families, and I explained why that was a load of rubbish. Now I'm going to explain why this latest accusation is rubbish too. I've been accused of immediately assuming that this was a false flag attack. Now, if you go to Hapanwo Voice and you look at the first article I wrote on this, if you check the links in the description box, you will find it. you'll see that that is not the case at all. I did not say it was immediately a false flag attack. What I actually said, I think I said it in the previous film as well, is that my first impression was that we should be suspicious. We should be skeptical with a C. Those are my exact words. We should be skeptical with a C. I made some predictions, and on Facebook and to other people, I made some predictions. I said that if this was a false flag attack, it would have certain features. It would contain certain elements that would signify it as a false flag operation. And I also laid out a challenge to my detractors. I said to them that if this event does not have these features and these elements, then I will believe the official story. And so I will say this is not a false flag attack. I will believe the official story. And since I made that prediction on Friday night, all these features and elements have emerged. This tableau here I found on Facebook, which you're looking at now, I don't believe it's entirely accurate, but I think some of the points here are valid, and all the valid points which you see here are a part of the terrorist attack in France. The political agenda, the initial media stories conflicting the official story, and I will talk a bit more about that in a minute. A lot of the forensic evidence is hidden. No one's allowed... Well, sure, there's some things you can't see which are too graphic, but the fact that there was a suspiciously small amount of imagery and drills held nearby. Now, this is an important point. This is a very important point too. That came true too. Media manipulation, mainstream media manipulation and tactics. Yes, we've already discussed that, and I'm going to discuss it again. But let's go back to the drills. Alright, the drills. Yeah, I think I'm repeating myself here, but I did explain how Patrick Pelloux, the French journalist, announced on radio that the police were already prepared, and because as luck would have it, as he says, they planned an exercise to train for exactly this kind of multi-site terrorist incident that very day. So that is definitely a part of something to look out for. The mainstream media manipulation and tactics, as I've explained, the passport, stuff like that, as I explained earlier, the strange situation of the passport not surviving a huge explosion which can basically atomize a body. Federal government attention. Well, this is obviously based on America, because America, of course, is a federation and has the two levels of government. France is a single nation state. It's not a federation, it's a single sovereign state. But you get this national government action, and we have seen that, and I'm going to talk more about that. But suffice to say that the predictions I made, this is a part of scientific investigation. You make predictions, if these predictions come true, they support your theory. I did that. I put it out on the line, and I said, look, if these things don't happen, I'll admit I was wrong, or I'll admit that this was not a false flag. But these features did emerge, so therefore I conclude it is a false flag. So these people who said I jumped to conclusions and assumed that this was a false flag are wrong. And I've explained to you how they're wrong. Now, in the previous film and in the previous radio shows and articles, I also addressed some of the slightly more dubious and questionable evidence that has been emerged out of this terrorist attack. And one of those was that the terrorist attack had been predicted on Twitter. On the 11th of November, the following tweet had been made. Breaking: death toll from Paris terror attack rises to at least 120 with 270 others injured. Now that sounds pretty convincing, doesn't it? It sounds like a pretty good convincing prediction, because that is virtually what happened, more or less. I suspected that this photo was fake. I looked into it, and it turns out it wasn't fake as such. It wasn't actively fake. It seemed quite plausible, actually, because there were IP addresses and things like that people had gathered, because various people in the conspiracy did investigate this. So it wasn't. It turns out it wasn't actively faked, but I think it's a mistake. And the reason I think that is because the account that is tweeting this prediction, the account that tweeted this, is called @PZBooks. Now, @PZBooks is apparently a bot. It's a bot that automatically creates fabricated headlines out of fragments of real ones. It's very clever, actually. It has these algorithms that actually take various parts of bits of information from the news and mixes them up and conjures up imaginary false stories. Very, very clever. And someone is obviously doing it just for entertainment. Now, the fact of the matter is, because it works over so many different news stories, the way it operates and the way it combines things, there's an infinite number of different combinations that it can process and post. So, by the law of mere chance alone, it's quite likely to come up with something that resembles a real event before it happens, or just before it happens. I mean, I'm not actually. You might say, "Well, Ben, this is you going on about coincidence again." You know, the skeptics. You slagged off the skeptics in the last film about coincidence, and here you are. You're suggesting a coincidence theory yourself. No, this is not coincidence. This is different. This is the fact that I wouldn't be surprised if this bot actually produces headlines about Paris terrorist attacks almost daily, if it really can process that many different news stories. So that's kind of like how this is what I think happened now. This is what I think happened here. I don't think there's anything suspicious about this at all. So I think this is something we can dismiss. Unless, ladies and gentlemen, you have any information about this, which leads me to believe that that is not the case, and this is actually a real prediction. I keep an open mind for that sort of thing, as you know. It could be that everything I've just told you is a cover story, and I don't, as you know, reject things like that. Now, there's been an update on this issue, which I brought up last week as well. The supposed crisis actress that had been spotted in Paris. This young woman has been seen, as it says here, at Aurora, Sandy Hook and Boston. And now she's been seen in Paris. That's what we've been told. Now, a French news agency claimed to have been able to successfully debunk this. They have said that all these women are different people. And this was a French website called France 24. It's a news website. There's an English language version of it, so you can actually go and read it yourself. They said that all these women, all four of them, are different people, and they've tracked down and identified all of them. Well, they haven't actually, because they said so if they had. Now, as far as I can see, all these women do look very much alike. And if you go to France 24's website dealing with this, if you go to their just go to their homepage and you'll scroll down and see it, they actually supposedly produce an image of these two together, and they're obviously different. But the thing is, they've pixelated them. They've actually pixelated the faces so that you can't actually tell. So I mean, what are they trying to claim? You've got to take their word for it. The resolution is so low on their reproduction, you can't actually see who they are. They're just telling you that they are. And I know people do coincidentally look different. It does happen. I mean, my own resemblance to Al Murray, the pub landlord, is very well documented. But these people do look suspiciously the same. The difference with the girl in Paris is that her hair is slightly different. I mean, it looks darker, but that could be the lighting effects. But also the fact she has a parting in a different place. The others have their parting kind of on the top right. She's done her hair differently. It's parted on the left. But I don't think that is a reason to think this is another person. I think it's quite like this person is a character actress. It's possible. We don't know for certain, but that's what I've heard. Now, another thing that's wrong with the France 24 article supposedly debunking this is that they talk about the instance as if it's a one-off. It's definitely not. There are many other articles of potential stagecraft like this, and a lot of them are more convincing. Yet these people on this website do not put that claim into context. They don't put this claim into the other examples of multiple crisis actors seen at various places, as I talked about last week. It's interesting. I'll come to think of it. Actually, I haven't made. I just was switching on the computer when I got home from work today, and guess what? There's a notice going on Facebook that Legless Joe has been seen in Paris too. Now, Legless Joe is a nickname for the guy in the wheelchair at Boston, the guy with his feet blown off, sitting up in a wheelchair, being pushed along by these paramedics, holding his hand to his face as if he's just had a tooth out or something. And as I explained, from being a hospital porter, I know that if someone has that kind of injury, they can't sit up in a damn wheelchair. you'd have to get them to you have to stop the bleeding, get them lying down. They probably wouldn't be conscious, and get them and stop it quick before they bleed to death. Now that guy has been identified. He's supposedly been identified as a crisis actor. The guy has been approached, and he claims that's not him; it's someone else. It's all a big confusing mess, as this story is. But I just think we want to think. I mean, if I get any more details on Legless Joe and whether him being there, I will let you know. Okay, but in the meantime, I want to thank my friend Gary on Facebook for bringing this to my attention. I'm not sure what to make of all this right now, but I will hopefully have some answers for you soon. I mean, I may not make a particular video about this again, because basically I want to move on to other things. It's getting depressing. It all depends on what the news reveals, whether I make a part 3 to this video series. We'll see. I'll talk about that later anyway.
Right, well, there's been a lot of talk online, and I'll go into this in detail, but first of all I want to state straight away that I'm not denying that something happened in Paris, something awful happened and real people died. It wasn't staged completely with crisis actors, despite the fact that crisis actors were present. It doesn't mean that there weren't real people who got killed. I'm not about to do a jungle surfer on you, alright? I haven't checked out his videos on this matter. I can guess what he's saying anyway. Another fake event in Paris. How many more times is this going to happen? If it wasn't for this list of shills I have, which is 3 pages long, we'd be finished. Anyway, another development that's happened, it's no surprise to me, is that this state of emergency, another thing I predicted that Hollande was talking about, it has started to solidify. There's more long-term effects that seem to be coming in. In France, but also in other countries. Now, on Hapanmo Voice and on Hapanmo Radio a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the draft investigatory powers bill. That's a very, very interesting way to put it, isn't it? They're making this Orwellian language the government uses. It was presented to Parliament by Theresa May, the Home Secretary, who's the most authoritarian Home Secretary we've ever had since the last one. And it's the draft investigatory powers bill. I mean, they can't exactly call it the Internet Censorship and Control Bill, can they? Anyway, let me just find the article. Actually, I should have. Sorry, mate, I haven't got my notes up yet. I haven't got all my notes up yet. But basically, this was something that she proposed. That would where is it? Here we go. Yeah, that's right. She said it was a problem reaction solution. She said that that organised crime, fraud, terrorists, and child abuse meant that there was a clear threat which needed to be dealt with. Well, organised crime, child abuse, terrorism, fraud. Well, firstly, I could say to Ms. May that if she wants to find a solution to those problems, she should look within the walls of Parliament, because that's where they seem to be the worst. But anyway, Shami Chakrabarti, the director of Liberty, it's a civil rights legal defence group, she said in response, "After all the talk of climb downs and safeguards, this long-awaited bill constitutes a breathtaking attack on the internet security of every man, woman and child in our country. We must now look to Parliament to step in where ministers have failed and strike a better balance between privacy and surveillance." Well, the first thing I'd say to Ms. Chakrabarti is she should quit the bloody Ditchley Foundation, because that's where she's a member of that. Do you remember my video of that? Ditchley Park. Yeah, it's Britain's equivalent of the Bilderberg Group. She's a member of it. But she should quit that. But it seems like that the Talk Talk. See, there was this hacking event on Talk Talk, the internet service provider, and that came out exactly the same time as Theresa May put her bill before Parliament. And I wondered if that was a coincidence. And it's funny because Edward Snowden, he talks, even he's mentioned this. He talks about, there we go. Yeah, he mentions the PRISM thing. Now, I know not everyone trusts Edward Snowden. Some people are convinced, 100% convinced he's a plant. I'm not sure. I think he might have done a deal with them, quite frankly, of some kind. But that's a big subject. But he's actually warned beforehand that this would happen. Right. So that's an important point, I think. But anyway, what's happened since then, of course, is that news article I just read out, which I put on her Panwo Voice, to do with the draft investigatory powers bill, that was about a week and a half ago. Well, it's all gone out the window now, isn't it? Everything Chakrabarti said is now irrelevant. It's just ignored. Instead, we have. See, I was confident that this draft investigatory powers bill would not become. It would not get onto the statute books. It would not become law, because it was just, there was such a lot of opposition to it. I thought it's not going to get through the House of Lords. It's going to have to be amended. May's going to have to make compromises on it, and if it ever hits the statute books, it will be like a pale imitation of its former self. I was confident of that. But then, of course, we had that attack in Paris, and then Lord Carlisle, Liberal Democrat peer, he has warned, he has called this bill absolutely vital. The current holes in the government's ability to spy on citizens allows terrorists a safe space to communicate. And who's going to argue with him now, eh? Who is actually going to stand up and say that he's wrong now? Someone who's not aware of the issues I brought to your attention in this series of films. Anyway, we have another issue. Several issues to do with Facebook, which is a direct result of this attack. Well, firstly, we have a Facebook user from West Yorkshire who's been arrested. He praised the Paris attacks on his timeline. He said, and I quote, "My brothers did well in Paris. Now we have proved that there's a bit of intelligence planning and synchronisation going on in our killings. You people are starting to realise that we are a force to be reckoned with. We are ISIS. This is our time now. Keep your eyes on Manchester. Allahu Akbar. Rest in peace, Jihadi John." Now, obviously, this is a horrible thing to say. This man's a creep, and he is inciting violence and hatred. And so I think in this situation that the police were right to bring him in. But when things like this happen and people like this emerge, the government is using it. They're deliberately blurring the lines between violence and expressing an opinion. They take legitimate action against real criminals. At the same time, they're trying to broaden and shift they're trying to shift the definition window away from people who do this very, very distinctive thing, either commit acts of violence or glorify and incite acts of violence, into people who simply express an opinion. Individuals who glorify terrorism have been conflated with those analysing the true nature of terrorism. David Cameron himself has mentioned specifically those who question the official story of 9/11, and he's described people like that as non-violent extremists, and they categorise those people in the same group as the actual criminals who carry out vicious, sadistic murder. Well, that includes people like your humble presenter. Oh, there's more. Oh God, this is crazy. This is ridiculous. A woman has had her Facebook account suspended because it's called ISIS. And the reason it's called ISIS is because ISIS is her name. Isis Anachali. She's an engineer from San Francisco in the USA, and she had a Facebook account suspended and she was locked out of it. And she had the most devil of a time persuading Facebook, the Facebook admin, that she was not some black-clad terrorist wielding a blood-stained dagger. In the end, she had to show them a picture of her face with a screenshot of her passport. Facebook, they apologised, they unlocked her account. But, you think they check these things out beforehand, but you see, this is where rationality and restraint goes out the window. Whenever something like this happens, you know, it's just all normal. It's just bets off. All normal procedure is just forgotten about. It goes out the window. The Prime Minister David Cameron has announced a huge budget boost to counter terrorism, security forces, and intelligence. Yeah, but he's £2 billion is being allotted to upgrade the Army Special Forces. That's the Special Air Service, the SAS Corps. And they've also announced that SAS operatives are patrolling the streets now in Britain. And you wouldn't recognise these guys. I mean, I'm sure this has been going on a long time covertly. I mean, it's no secret that they've been active in Northern Ireland for a long time, since the 1960s. Because you won't be able to spot these guys because they'll be dressed in ordinary civilian clothes. They'll be like undercover cops, basically. And then they'll be performing that role. And of course, this has been announced in the newspapers. God, it's like there's a bit of military religion in this, actually. I'll show you the headline right now.
This is the headline here. There's some new SAS force to fight jihadis. Oh my goodness. Oh. So that's well, the first thing that strikes me is this is as you see, this is a tabloid newspaper. I can't remember which one I got it from. Probably the Daily Fail or the Express crap or something. But anyway, I predict a resurgence of the military religion as a result of this. We're going to have the same thing that France has got with the army on the streets. Excuse me. And this is going to coincide with an upsurge in what I've talked about before when it comes to the military religion, the deifying of the armed forces, the promotion of the armed forces in the media and everywhere. So they become a kind of become kind of sacred, and have a kind of like a huge status in society. For instance, we've just had the Remembrance Sunday. Now, I would predict, based on, depending on what happens in the following year, whether there are any more of these attacks, that next year's Remembrance Sunday is going to be very different in tone to the one we've just had. We've just had, for example, a huge scandal because of the fact that when Jeremy Corbyn was at the cenotaph, he didn't bow his head for long enough or low enough, and the Sun or one of these other crappy arse-wipe newspapers they had a protractor and a stopwatch, and they were measuring the angle which he bowed his head and timing how long it took. And when he didn't do it for long enough or deep enough, they published on the headlines what a horrible man he was. Of course, that's ludicrous. It's insane, even by the tabloid Murdoch standards. That's pretty low, but it's going to get worse. I mean, I think next November you will be of a situation where people who are not wearing remembrance poppies are going to be attacked on the streets. They're not going to be allowed on buses. They're not going to be served in pubs, things like that. I can actually see that happening. The military religion is going to get so intense. And as you know, I mean, I don't like these remembrance poppies. I never wear one myself, and I made an entire video about that. I think it's given out the wrong message about how we should regard wars in the past, and I think it represents a blood sacrifice. The red of the poppy, actually, on an occult Illuminati level, is symbolic of blood. It's a blood sacrifice. It's actually a blood ritual involving the deaths of millions of young men, especially in the Great War, but also in World War II, in other wars happened since the Falklands, etc. So anyway, we're looking at military law enforcement in most countries in the Western world from now on. I think, unless this information gets out and people become aware of it and take action on what is really going on in this world.
And what's more, we've got an additional 1,900 people are going to be recruited into the intelligence services, MI5, MI6, GCHQ. Cameron has also he did this speech at one of these posh dinners where he's sitting there in his £600 suit while he's signing austerity into law. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about. Now, don't be surprised if we see the foundation of a British equivalent of the Transportation Safety Administration in America. That is the airline security. He's talking about an airline security overhaul, basically. So you're going to get these goons with in uniforms and sunglasses who order you to go into these X-ray machines and give you cancer. And if you refuse, they drag you out into the middle of the hallway and they basically subject you to a sexual assault. That's what they literally do. That, I mean, it's not, you don't just get the little pat down with the electrical wand anymore. You know, it's literally it's almost a sort of bend over finger situation. You know what I mean? And they do it publicly to humiliate people. Kevin Annett, who travels a lot, he said if you don't go through one of these machines, they give you a public pat down. So don't be surprised if that happens. Oh, do you hear that also Anonymous Anonymous, they're going to target ISIS. This is really amazing. Do you think they can do this? Can Anonymous do this, where global electronic intelligence has failed? I wouldn't be surprised, actually, if Anonymous succeed, because, as I've explained, I don't think the intelligence networks are trying to actually locate who ISIS is. The thing about it is, the government don't have to use GCHQ and the NSA to find out who ISIS is, because they already know who ISIS is. All they have to do is go through their own personnel records. Anyway, Anonymous they are targeting ISIS. They've made an announcement on YouTube that they're going to dox everyone with any connections to ISIS and supporting ISIS. They're going to post their personal details on Twitter, etc., etc. So we'll have to see what happens there. But how much time have I got? Right. So we'll have to see. I think we're going to have to see what happens there. But oh well. I'm curious to find out what the results of that are. I really am. Anyway, other people have got involved with this. As I said, Nick Colostrum. He's got. Oh, there's some news from Nick Colostrum, definitely. Yes, and another guy who's been speaking out and doing an excellent job is Ken O'Keefe. Now he's an American guy. He's a former colleague of mine, actually, on the People's Voice, and he's done a brilliant video. Now I don't think this is on YouTube, but he was actually on Press TV. If you just Google Ken O'Keefe Press TV, you'll find it, and it's absolutely magnificent what he does. Kerry Cassidy as well has done a live hangout with Ola Damagard, and that's on YouTube on the Project Camelot channel. And also Truth Frequency Radio are doing a Paris special with Ola Damagard, Chris Everard, and Kev Baker, and a couple of other people. And also there's another radio show on Truth Frequency you might be interested in listening to. It's the last Kev Baker show, because it's an hour-long Kev Baker show in which there's a discussion about Paris and several other subjects, and the guest is me. So if you can't get enough of me, and this video just whets your appetite for more of me, then please go to Truth Frequency Radio and watch the Kev Baker show. Oh, so I'm sure there'll be a lot more. There'll be a lot more in terms of that, I can promise you.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is another important update that's come to my attention. What you see in front of you is Charles de Gaulle, named after the maverick president of France. This is the aircraft carrier. She's nuclear powered, she's enormous, she's very powerful, she's the most powerful ship in the French Navy, she's their flagship, and she's on her way to the Middle East. She actually left on Wednesday from her base in Toulon, and she's now heading there to fight ISIS, to take the fight to the enemy. And there's lots of news stories about how this aircraft carrier is being deployed in a new operation against ISIS as a result of the attack in Paris last Friday, Friday the 13th. She left on Wednesday the 18th, and she's carrying lots of aircraft there and lots of sailors and an enormous amount of firepower to the area where she can attack ISIS. Now, this is all very interesting, and maybe you can say, well, that's understandable. Of course, they're going to want to fight back against whoever attacked them. The problem is that putting a ship of this size onto a major overseas deployment can't be done very quickly. It's not the sort of thing. It's not like putting a key in the ignition of a car and driving out of a driveway. It's very important. It's very difficult to organise. It's difficult to get together. It has to be planned in advance. And indeed, this is very interesting. The French government actually announced that this ship would be deployed to the Middle East on the 5th of November. On the 5th of November, 8 days before the attack in Paris. Now, this is all. It's starting to ring alarm bells here. Of course, sending ships into battle, it's always a big thing. These are the crew of the ship are in danger, etc., etc. It's controversial, and of course the war in Syria currently is controversial. However, I wonder if it's so controversial now. That's the question. And again, it's very convenient for anyone who did want to begin this operation. For anyone who planned this operation, it's very convenient they've had this atrocity in Paris, because it gets public support behind it. And the ship obviously was there, fueled, it was victualled, she was all ready to go. The crew were aboard, it was all set, all the plans had been made, and she could set sail. again, it's like the striking when the iron's hot. We see this with 9/11. Okay, the operation in Afghanistan immediately after the attacks on September the 11th happened very quickly. It happened. They wanted to get in there and get out of there before winter. Winter in Afghanistan is very harsh, so they wanted to get in there and do it, and get before winter set in. And they did, because the forces were already in place. There was a major international exercise going on. I think it was in the United Arab Emirates or Oman or somewhere in the Middle East. So a huge number of forces were already forwardly deployed on standby, involved in this exercise. All they needed was the trigger. 9/11 happened, all the forces were already there. They could immediately just switch operations and move across to Afghanistan, which is just a short distance away. Now, I'm not a military expert, okay? I was in the Royal Navy, but not for very long, just for a few months. I dropped out of training. But you don't have to be Lord Nelson to understand these things. It's something that you can work out with common sense, just looking at a ship like this, and all the organisation that goes into it, all the escort ships that have to go with it, because things like that. You must realise that this must have been planned long ago, and then suddenly, boom, it happened. The iron is struck, just when it's hot. And you see, there's lots of other things to do with 9/11. I'm going off topic slightly here, but the TV series 24, there were two TV series, right? 24 and Spooks. One was in the United States, and the other was in Britain. Both of those series were actually hit the airwaves just after 9/11. 24 actually happened in November 2001. Spooks came about, I think, early 2002, which meant that those TV series had to be in production before 9/11 happened. Again, they're striking when the iron's hot, okay? They always say strike when the iron's hot, but don't you think you're very lucky if you strike and you don't know whether the iron is hot or not, and you suddenly found, oh wow, the iron's hot. Fancy that. What a coincidence. Aren't I lucky? I doubt whether luck comes into it. I think there's a lot more going on here.
Now, the news is reporting at the moment that there was a police raid in the early hours of Thursday at 4:20 a.m. French time. That's 3:30 in the morning our time, where armed police raided a block of flats in Saint-Denis. This is a suburb north of Paris. It's actually not far from the Stade de France stadium where the explosions took place on Friday night. The roads were sealed off. There was a lot of the reporters were all there. Oh, it's quite something. Anyway, the police raided the flat, and there was a shootout. It lasted quite a while actually. They actually released, I think it was 5,000 rounds actually released during the course of this this shootout. A dog was killed. A Diesel, the police dog, was killed, and there's lots of things going around on Facebook saying "Je suis Diesel," and it's really, really sad. Anyway, they're reporting at the moment that two people were killed. There's no police casualties as far as I can see. But anyway, one of them was shot, and the other one, a woman, committed suicide by detonating explosives on her clothing again. She had a suicide vest on with explosives built in. Now, the man who was shot was this Mohammed Evil Al Turban, or whatever his name is, the leader, the ringleader, the guy with the beard, and he was the guy who was shot, according to the police. He's been identified by his fingerprints. Interestingly, the woman, though, the woman that they think is his cousin, who's another jihadi, but they're going to have to identify her by DNA evidence. Yeah, it's it's very strange that, because did she have a passport on her that survived? Yeah, they couldn't even literally. It seems weird, doesn't it? I mean, they can't even go by dental records. Presumably that means even her jawbone is not intact, and her teeth must be all over the place. Sorry to be gruesome, but that is the case. And but if she had a passport on her, I'm sure that's okay. And there's been 7 arrests. Paris is in a bit of a, like I say, Paris is still in a lockdown state. Some of the shops are shut, the banks are shut, things like that. So I've got a lot of respect for people in the truth movement for making a stand on this. as I said, the conspirasphere is divided at the moment between those who I think are sensible researchers, those that I'm trying to emulate myself, and some of the more crazy theories, or not crazy. I mean, that's what the skeptics would say, wouldn't they? What's the word? I'm thinking about the more dubious evidence, which might be true or might not, which I talked about earlier. The Twitter thing, that's and the Twitter, the tweet about the predictions and things like that. That is something that is worth looking at, but is more dubious. And then there's this tendency, which is quite large, which is just denying that this is a false flag operation. These are people who understand about 9/11. They know about it, but they do not accept this as a false flag operation. And my Facebook friends list, I think, must be on a calorie-controlled diet, because it has lost an awful lot of weight over this weekend, even more since the last time I spoke to you. Yeah, I'm getting more rude messages, and people unfriending me and blocking me. And that includes some people in this YouTube's comments box. I'm actually going to read out some of your comments later. I've replied to some of you, but I'm going to do a little comment dissection. Now, there's another article that's posted online, which I'm not going to put up a slide on this because it's very gruesome. But there's an article that's been posted that accuses the French authorities of actually staging the event at the Bataclan Theatre by basically killing a load of people and planting the bodies. Now, there's a photo in this article, which I said is unpleasant, it's graphic, but I don't apologise for discussing this, and I put links in the article on the Hapanwo blog to this, because this could be an essential piece of evidence. Yes, it's grisly, but it's important. It's right in that way. It's rather like the Zapruder film. It's very unpleasant to watch. It's extremely, it's a pretty nasty situation. I mean, if in any other circumstances that film would not be published, but it's so historically and evidentially important that people need to see it. And I think this is included in that, because there's an image there which does look like an accurate interior shot of the Bataclan Theatre. Of course it could be Photoshop, but then what couldn't nowadays? But you can see quite clearly if you look at this image, and I won't post. I'm not going. It's called thephilosophers.co.uk /?P = 5452. As I said, I'm not going to. There's links in the description box to the articles I've written about this, where you can actually you'll actually be able to see the links to these articles in there. I'm not posting links to these articles directly in the description box. Otherwise, the description box should just be a long list of links. You can see quite clearly that the bodies have been manhandled. They've been dragged around the place. They leave a trail of blood behind them. There's even said to be occult symbolism within the trails on the floor. I wouldn't put it past them. I really wouldn't. As I said, I've lost more friends, and that is, as I said before, that is something that I have to put up with. And literally, the comments boxes under the Facebook post where I place these articles have become so heated. I mean, they get very heated, and there's an attempt to refute. Very often, people use a lot of adjectives without actual argument, rather like. It reminds me of Stefan Molyneux when he was debating Peter Joseph from the Zeitgeist movement. He says, "Quit it with the damn adjectives. Stop telling me why I'm wrong and explain, and stop saying I'm wrong and explain why I'm wrong." You know, that kind of thing. You want to say this to people, but very often these discussions, they cross over that line, don't they? They go above that threshold where they just then when they go above that threshold, a kind of chain reaction kicks in, doesn't it? And it just turns into a chain reaction of meaningless insult and rhetoric, and when that happens, it becomes a kind of self-sustaining downward spiral of ego battling. And when that happens, once the conversation goes into that mode, all you can do is leave the thread, because all attempts at rational discourse from thenceforward are impossible, and it happens all the time. It's like debating with bloody Slackster, I'll tell you. He's like that all the time. I mean, yeah, he's like I said, it's. Stop, you know, and it's like, well, it's like a noise in your ear. Do you know what I mean? But the good thing about a Facebook feed, this is the good thing about Facebook, which gives it an advantage over the good old-fashioned forums. I mean, I'm always championing the the delights of the traditional Facebook forums, the traditional internet forums, and saying how much better they are than Facebook. But in one way, Facebook is a lot better, because the good thing about your Facebook feed is all you have to do is log out for a few hours. When you log back in, all this stuff will have disappeared over the horizon. It'll be, you won't be able to find it again, unless you will be able to find it again. But it's gone so far down your feed, it's really difficult. So it's quite easy to escape from this. Now, it's a little bit of an aside here, but there's another example of what I'm talking about. It's like I said, this is just an aside, but a few months ago, an accusation was made that there was a satanic child abuse ring in Hampstead, in London. There were some films of some children talking, and there was a number of groups were set up about it. At the same time, a counterclaim emerged saying that the Hampstead case was a hoax. And several groups were set up about that, and I wanted to get some information, so I joined these groups and started looking around. Well, I should have known better, because what happened was, immediately a situation broke out which I think could best be described as the Facebook equivalent of nuclear war. I went there to get information, and it was like I was going into this place expecting to see an informative lecture, and instead walking in on a barroom brawl. And I just hope, for the sake of those children, that the hoax people are right. I really do. Because no progress was made. If it was real, then no progress has been made at all. But back on the subject of Paris, as Ronnie Corbett would say, on with the joke. And it is a joke, really. I mean, I don't want to make light of people's deaths, but it is a bloody joke what they've done to us. It's a sick joke. Well, I'll just tell you, you can. I've done a Her Panwo radio special, and there are links in the description box to that, and you can read that. Now, you can listen to that. It's program 162 of Her Panwo Radio. I talk about this in more detail. Now, there's more. Yes. Nick Colostrum. I should mention what Nick Colostrum has been doing, because he has his nose to the ground when it comes to things like this. He's an expert on false flag terrorism, and in fact, Nick Colostrum's going to be my guest on the Her Panwo show next week. So please keep your eye on the Her Panwo Radio blog. If you haven't read his book Terror on the Tube, please read it, because it's the one. And if you looked at my video list, I actually recorded a lecture with Nick Colostrum in Oxford. He appeared at the Albion Beatnik bookshop in Oxford, and I filmed it. So please do go to that. It's if you go to my video list, you'll see it a few videos down. It was a couple of months ago. Now, Nick Colostrum, this is where we come on to the signs of a false flag operation in which the initial news stories contradict the official story. Nick has been going through all the media, including the French media, and he's discovered some of the witness reports. Now, we're told that the killers used a black Seat. Well, one of the witnesses to one of the restaurant shootings, he describes the killer's car as a Mercedes, not a Seat. There's a big difference between the Mercedes, which is a luxury make, and the Seat, which is a budget hatchback. And he describes the killer as white, clean-shaven, with dark hair neatly trimmed. And in fact, someone from the Bataclan Theatre describes the killer as blonde. So these are not people from the Middle East. They're obviously racially different from people from the Middle East. Now, there are, in the Middle East is actually, to be fair, there are Euro-Caucasoid people in the Middle East. People who are racially rather like Europeans, like myself, have white skin, pale coloured eyes and hair. Well, not hair in my case, but with most people. But they tend to be a minority, and they're mostly in places like Iran and Turkey. They're not in Iraq and that area. Now, this is an inconsistency that reminds me very much of another case. Now, you want to look into this, you really do. This is important simply for, this is something that happened a long time ago, but it's important simply for historical precedent, and that is a similar shooting at a place called Port Arthur in Australia. Now, Jungle Surfer, to give him his dues, he's looked into this. He's actually visited the space. what happened was at a place called Port Arthur, a man walked into a cafe and opened fire on the people and killed a number of them. He killed about 20 and injured about 20. So he killed about the same number that he injured. Now the culprit was named as Martin Bryant, who was this young guy with a typical profile of one of these criminals. He was a bit of a loner, he had a low level of intelligence, he had a history of mental illness, and he had a history in interest in guns. So in that way he was not that dissimilar from Barry George, who was said to have shot Jill Dando, the TV presenter, and was then later released on appeal. However, the witness reports from the cafe said the gunman was much older, and he was also a better shot. This was a guy who killed people with headshots and chest shots. So he was this guy seemed to have some kind of military training, and he was older than Bryant. So he left I think the same number of people dead as injured. So which indicates that he was trained. He was a good shot. Now Joe Viles has written a book called Deadly Deception at Port Arthur, which you want to read. I think it is online now. There's several articles in Nexus about this, which I do recommend. Which means, this yelling of Allahu Akbar and ranting about Syria, is that just a piece of... that sounds a little bit Hollywood, doesn't it? It just seems a little bit like what you'd expect them to say. That's like a bad movie script. Nick Holstrom has also says that the response time of the police was actually quite sluggish. Now I'm not sure about that, but this is what he says. He's looked into this. Now, a few miles away from when all this happened, something else happened in 1997 at the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, and that was the death of Princess Diana. And we see the suspiciously slow reaction of the police and emergency services. And that's very interesting. Now, the question, of course, is, were these shooters actually government special forces operatives and intelligence agents? I don't know. And there's a couple of other suspicious elements that Nick has identified. For instance, the Bataclan Theatre was owned by some people who were staunch Zionists. And therefore, if they were staunch Zionists, they may well have been recruited by Mossad. And what's interesting is that the theatre was sold. They sold the theatre and buggered off to Israel. And they did this after 40 years of running this theatre. They just suddenly up and left. And they sold the theatre and left on, wait for it, September the 11th. Coincidence? And I wonder where the CCTV footage is. I know in the last film they were saying Paris only has 10% of the CCTV cameras that London does. Well, that's still one on every corner, even 10%. Now, I'm going to make another prediction. Alright? Mark my words. What do you want to bet that some news report is going to be released saying that the CCTV cameras were coincidentally all pointing the other way? Just like they did in 1997 for Diana. So, through some extraordinary oversight, we don't have any CCTV footage of her final journey. What do you want to reckon the same thing's going to happen again? Because it happened before. It happened on 7/7, remember? Is another piece of false flag government terrorist history about to repeat itself? That's the question. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, Hapanwo TV viewers, I'm going to go through the comments that you left on the first video in this series, and I have already replied to some of them in the comments box, but I think I'd rather reply to them in the video. It's as with the UFO Disclosure 2015 series. I find it's easier and it's more cosy and intimate. Right, well, I'd like to thank everyone who's left a comment on this video. Well, most people anyway. It's as with my other videos, the comments are kind of a mixture of the good, the bad and the ugly. So first of all, some of you have been very, very helpful, and particularly Ian Parks and Thomas de Torquemada. Oh dear. Thomas de Torquemada. I hope you're not going to torture me until I denounce the devil. Now, one of the issues that came up in the first video was that I wondered about the date Friday the 13th, because I wasn't sure whether it actually was unlucky in France. I know it's not unlucky everywhere in the world. I know in different countries have different superstitious traditions, and different mannerisms. I know that in Mexico 13 is a lucky number, and I know that in Italy 17 is an unlucky number. So Friday the 13th I know is not universal around the world, but I wanted to know, is it unlucky in France? And according to Ian and Thomas, not only it's Ian Parks, this guy, I mentioned him, yeah. Not only is it considered unlucky in France, but the actual superstition originated in France. And I should know this actually, because I had heard something about it. It's got to do with the Knights Templar. I believe it's it was the 13th of October. What year was it? It was sometime in the 13th century anyway. That the King of France actually purged the Templars. He got them all together. He tortured them to try and make them give up their secrets, which I don't think if they gave up any secrets, then they kept it. The king then kept it to himself, and then he had them burned at the stake. Those who didn't, some of the Templars escaped. They got into their ships, which were very fast. They had these very fast ships, and they escaped. Some of them went to Scotland and became the Scottish Rite Freemasons. If you ever read the book Born in Blood, it's very good. It's the history of the Freemasons. Very interesting. Some of them went to America and went across to the American colonies over there. Yes, in the 13th century, I know. 200 years before Columbus this was actually. The Knights Templar and several other secret societies already had colonies in the Americas, yes. Columbus did not discover America, ladies and gentlemen. That is a big lie, and I'm going completely off topic. I'm going into another... that's a subject for another video. And I have written articles on this on the Hapanwo blog. But anyway, suffice to say, the superstition over Friday the 13th is very strong in France. And it is, and that is, I think, makes it significant that this date was chosen. Darren Cooper, nice one, Ben, thanks. You're welcome, Darren. Paul Price, have you taken notes, Ben, or are you just reading a timeline of events from the BBC? Is this an analysis or a repetition? Right, oh, right. Why do you want to know, Paul? Is it relevant? Paul Price, you sound familiar to me, Paul. Have we met before? I'm moving swiftly on. Tamenga88. Funny, when I'm clicking this vid, I see another vid from RT. Oh, really? Do you mean in the recommended in the video slot by the side? Recommended video slot? Because yeah, I do too. It's because it's the subject matter. But anyway, there was a bit of a thread dissection here. Yeah. Me and Tamenga had a little discussion. And Tamenga says, I have no problems here. Maybe it's censored in your country's servers. ISIS financed from 40 countries, including G20 members, by Vladimir Putin. Full speech. Now, that's interesting, Tamenga. Yeah. As I said before, Vladimir Putin is one of the few statesmen on earth I feel any sense of respect for. I think he's not doing what he's told by the powers that be. And not that he's necessarily on our side, but he's definitely not on theirs, put it that way. Yes. And Thomas de Torquemada explained why. Explained these things to me. He explained that again. He brings up the Friday the 13th subject. Bill, thanks for bringing this to light, Ben. You're welcome, Bill. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Paul Price. Paul Price again. Oh, Ben, first off you used the word terrorist to describe 9/11, and then you state there's a video of explosions going off. Only the sound from the stadium, and people do not stop and pay attention at all. They cheered since they probably thought it was a firework. Right. Okay. Well, I use the word terrorist attack to describe 9/11. Yes, I do. And well, Ian jumps in here. I'm going to do this little thread dissection here, you know, like millennial woes, you know. I should do this in the dark with a cigarette and a Coke bottle. The smugness of them. Oh dear, I can't believe it. Milk toast liberals. Oh. Anyway, yeah, what's wrong with, Ian says here, what's wrong with the word terrorist attack to describe 9/11? Regardless who did it, it was an act of terrorism. That's true, Ian. Paul Price says, it muddies the water. It was a false flag. People died, felt terror, but to use the word terror attack puts the visions of ragheads into people's minds, not Mossad agents. And then Paul then adds underneath, he knows what he's doing. And then Ian Ian just questions that. Who do you mean by he? And then he means me, of course. What do I know I'm doing, Paul? Please clarify. Now, as far as I actually jump in here later on, and I say to Paul, I say I will use whatever word I choose to describe 9/11, and I think is accurate. Understood? Good. Secondly, and this is the point, right? The last thing the truth movement needs is its own brand of political correctness. It needs its own terminology, which we must not deviate from. 9/11, and Ian is right. 9/11 was a terrorist attack, and to say the word terrorist I don't believe is deviating from the script. Is deviating people away from what's true. I don't believe it does that. I believe. Well, Paul, if you're that concerned about 9/11 being confused information about 9/11 coming out, right? What do you think of this thermite crap? And what do you think of Dr. Do you understand that Dr. Judy Wood was right? Right, because I bet you anything. Paul goes, he's concerned about a thermite. And then he says, yes, he's concerned about 9/11. But then he says, oh yes, a thermite was in the buildings, and there was real planes used, and the planes smashed through the building walls. Oh, please, just look up Dr. Judy Wood and look at her work. She has definitively discredited that. Anyway, I'm putting words into Paul's mouth. I don't know this specifically, and I apologise, Paul, if I'm incorrect there. But I mean, using the word terrorist, I think is absolutely fine. I don't think it makes any difference, so long as the rest of the information you bring out is correct, that people can understand. And I also question him on this. He writes. He spends all this. He must have spent about an hour on this comments thread. You state in the video there's the video of explosion. You state that there is a video of explosions going off. Well, you're wrong. You're wrong. There was no video of those explosions going off. There's sound from the explosions going off in the stadium. All right, Paul. Sure. If it means that much to you, okay. There was no film of the explosions. All right. And then he says, yeah, and people didn't stop because I said that people stopped to listen to the explosions. And he says, no, they didn't. They didn't stop to pay attention at all. They cheered since they probably thought it was a firework. Blimey. You're in good form today, Paul. I reckon Paul is one of these people, right, who'll send back. He'll send back a meal at a restaurant because there's one strand of spaghetti too little. I bet when you buy packets of crisps, Paul, you open them up and you count them, don't you? You count how many crisps are in there. And if there's one crisp short, you write out a long angry letter off to Walkers or KP and saying, you spend an hour writing a bloody letter explaining how annoyed you are. I bet you're one of those people, aren't you? I bet if you're a landlord and I bet you if you're a landlord and you have tenants, right, and they run off with like a piece of blue tack stuck to the wall, I bet you send them a bill for it, don't you? I bet you send them a bill for 1 penny, demanding that they pay for the blue tack, that little bit of blue tack they pulled off the wall. You're one of those kinds of people, aren't you, Paul? There we go. Let's go on. Okay. Thomas de Torquemada. 7 replies. Oh, it says 7 replies, but I can't see them. I don't know why that is. Sorry. Anyway, there's a couple of long threads here. Here we go. Oh, this one works. Adam, fantastical book reader. R.I.P. to the dead. It's getting awfully bad, Ben. David Icke and all the others, including yourself, were right. It's all white flag to centralised power. Racist abuse is on the rise, unfortunately. I wear a beard. I'm an Indian Asian. Sometimes when I go out at night, I hide my beard under a scarf so I don't get attacked by an ignorant. Thanks, Adam. Well, yeah, it is bad. And I mean, I feel sorry for you guys. Innocent people who are of Asian extraction. Because, I mean, we've heard, and it's been on the news about how there's been an increase in attacks on people, people, non-white people, and that's to be expected. Unfortunately, there are some ignorant, angry people out there who will tar everyone with the same brush. As soon as something like this happens, they'll just see, oh, it was Muslims that did it, therefore all Muslims without exception are the problem, therefore all Muslims are a viable target for revenge attacks. I think this is actually part of what they want, the whoever is behind this attack, I think it's part of what they want, because I've said many times that the plan is for a civil war. The plan is for a civil war in Europe. But Adam, I'm sorry this happened. I mean, I live with 3 guys who are Sudanese Muslims, and they're the nicest people I've ever lived with, and I don't believe they've ever harmed anyone. They've never harmed me. And unfortunately, though, they are now. Some people are going to be really targeted. And I've replied to Adam here. I think they're setting these people up as an enemy in a civil war. And Adam says here, indeed, Ben, but if only everyone could see and understand this secret agenda you've been saying for a very long time now. Do you feel all this is also to introduce young British men and women to enter the possible reintroduction of national service? Perhaps they want the Muslims to join as well, because they know Muslims particularly like to fight for their faith. This is probably why they make these ISIS people attack Muslims. It seems a bit far-fetched, I know, but you never know, I guess. By the way, thanks for the link. Regards, Adam. I sent Adam a link to my radio blog. Well, Adam, yeah, I mean, I wish everyone could see the secret agenda too. And one of the reasons I'm making this film is because I want more people to see it. I want more people. The more of us who make these films, the more likely someone will come across one of these films that is telling the truth. As I said, I've got Nick Colostrum on my radio show next week. We're going to go into it in more detail. I'll post links to that when I have them. The reintroduction of national service. Right, this is part of what ties in with the military religion, which I spoke about earlier. And I think it's perfectly possible if a war on the scale that they want comes about, then I think they will need some kind of draft, as they did in the Vietnam War for the United States. But they had a draft before the war, but it increased, where some people were actually, some people when they left school were actually called up, as you would be called up for jury duty to do military service. For those people, I mean, I'm against drafts into any kind of profession. I think it should be a choice. I would say in an ideal world, if someone wanted to join the armed forces, I'd be very encouraging, because in an ideal world the armed forces would be used for what they're supposed to be used for, that is to defend the realm. But the armed forces in the modern world are not being used for that. They're being used as, to quote Henry Kissinger, dumb, stupid animals to be used in tools of foreign policy. This is why when I went to Warminster, the Warminster 50 event in UFO Truth Disclosure 2015, I objected to the fact that their association with the event with the Help for Heroes, because I believe Help for Heroes is a part of that. I would recommend anyone considering joining the armed forces today in this world, don't. It's that simple. It's like drugs, don't just say no, because you will not be doing the job which you were told you're supposed to be doing. I know, because I joined the armed forces. I mean, I was kicked out of it long before any of this came into my life. But if I hadn't been, I would be a part of this now. I'd probably be on some ship somewhere, or some submarine lobbing missiles at innocent people. You know, you've got to. It's not cowardly to refuse. If you're called up, if there is national service and you were called up, don't let anyone call you a coward. Don't let anyone hand you a white feather, because it's not. It's actually doing something very brave. It's making a stand against an authoritarian diktat out of a matter of principle, and it takes a lot of guts to do that. The conscientious objectors in the Great War, some of the bravest people in the war, because they were treated like dirt. I mean, they were given white. At least the War Office actually recruited people, usually attractive, pretty girls, you know, because they know what our weaknesses are as blokes, to hand out these white feathers to these men. And those who stuck by their guns, they were much braver than the men who went and say, "Well, I'm going to go and fight because I can't cope with this peer pressure." A man will face an army. Most men will face an army before the scorn of their society. And for those who are not, who will not be eligible for a national service because you're disabled, or you're too old, etc., etc., or you're a woman, or too young, all right, support those who refuse, please. And Adam, yeah, I mean, I reply to Adam here. Justin Sherwood, now he's a friend of mine on Facebook. Ben, I was saying to some on Facebook that it's like deja vu over and over again, yet the people just don't see it. How are they so blind to all this? It was only a week ago that the world of athletics was one of many sports to be exposed. It's all a joke. Thanks, bud. The world of athletics. What do you mean, actually, Jay? Sorry, I did reply, but I don't think I'm sorry. I probably didn't read your your comment properly. I'm very sorry about that. What do you mean by the world of athletics being exposed? In what way? Could you clarify? Thanks. Ludicrous. Here we go. This person whom you met and asked you to unfriend her, was she in the conspiratorial research community? Did she have the same views on 9/11? All right, this is this individual I know who was a Facebook friend and someone I'd met a couple of times who actually told me to told everyone who believed that this was an inside job to unfriend her, and I did, and we ended up having an argument, and she swore at me and blocked me. she actually, after I unfriended her, she indignantly asked me why I unfriended her, saying, "Why did you do that for?" And I said, "You asked me to. I didn't mean it like that. Look." And it's like, but she's a strange character. She's very fickle. She's very capricious. Everybody at some point has had some run-in with her. She rather like Slaxer. She has some need for conflict in her life. She needs enemies. She gets some sustenance out of argy-bargy, you know. Goonlove said, "This has made me think deep." Well, I'm glad, Goonlove. I'm very, very glad indeed. Sismic971, aka CJ. Right. Just to make things clear about Friday the 13th, it is considered a weird day. We have a special lottery gain on most, if not every, Friday the 13th. I think this is the country he lives in, wherever that is. But a lot of people consider it an unlucky day. Now you know. By the way, we don't need more surveillance here. We just need politics to stop their nonsensical exterior policy and the cabal to be arrested. I quite agree. And just because the name sounds Arabic doesn't mean the person wearing it is a bad person. Though you might have been sarcastic on this one. Pride and Dignity, French viewers. Oh, it's signing out. It's a French person. All right. Well, I know. I mean, maybe all Arabic names sort of sound sinister in the mainstream media nowadays. But that may ties in with what I was saying earlier on about the suspect and his photo. Anyway, Pride and is he a Porto? I wonder. Pride and Dignity. I don't know how you say that in French, but Frère Portier d'Hôpital. I think that's right. Speaking from a failed GCSE French education. Right, in London, you could have watched it happen on CCTV. Yes, you could, Ludicrous, because especially if you hacked in. Although, as I said earlier, probably they wouldn't be working, like with Diana. Beetlejuice says, "Yes, I think his was an whodunit. Benjamin Netanyahu would be number one suspect." Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we know about Mossad and we know about the history of their involvement in false flag terrorism, the fact that their motto is "We shall do war by deception," means that, and the fact that he threatened France means that he should be a number one suspect. But of course, you never touch Israel. Israel are lily white. They are they're like the Godfather, you know, untouchables. Stephen Bamber, hi Steve, he's an old mate of mine. What about the Illuminati? Nobody mentions them. Well, I do, Steve. I mention them, Stephen. Tiberius Kirk, ZXR Alien Warrior. Rest in peace to all those who lost their lives in this evil event, but the truth of the real forces behind this event must out. As each hour passes, the evidence mounts to some form of false flag. Thanks, Ben, for acting on this so quickly. You're very welcome, and that's very true, Tiberius. As I said before, I started studying this and I started writing about it before all the evidence was in, and I made predictions that certain amounts of evidence would be found if this is a real false flag. And if this evidence didn't occur, then I would not think it was a false flag. But they did. It did occur. Archon Watch. Oh, I know. Oh, Archon Watch is a good friend of mine. Oh, yeah, it's nice to... This video is so well put together. Well done, Ben, especially on exposing these ruddy crisis actors. They should start selling a magazine with the woman on the front. She's so good at it. Oh, thanks, Archon Watch, and I'm glad you commented. I'm really pleased. Well, it's funny. There's this hashtag going around called hashtag crisis actors or something, and it's got that that lady, whoever she is, photoshopped into the car next to President Kennedy, or on the moon next to where they're filming the fake moon landings, and lots of other things like that. I'm sorry to make light of this, but you do need it, actually. You need All right, here we go. Beetlejuice. Oh no, Bill Bennett. Sorry. Thanks for this mini review of Thanks for the mini review of Incontrovertible, Ben. Now this refers to the film review I made. If you go to Japan My Voice, you'll find I went to see the premiere of the film Incontrovertible, which is all about 9/11. It was produced by Tony Rook, who is a man who very wisely and bravely refused to pay his TV licence because the BBC were lying about 9/11. Another guy called Matt Campbell, whose brother died on 9/11 in the Twin Towers, he's been campaigning as well. Ben, sounds all the better to me for carefully avoiding Dr. Judy Wood, so I'll give it a go. I know I won't win any popularity contests at the moment by saying so, and will probably even attract accusations of being a shill for it, but hey-ho. Architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth rejected her claims as pseudo-scientific bunk and offer far better evidence for controlled demolition, and so I go with their conclusions. Either way, though, it is noticeable how Dr. Wood's ideas have caused a rift in the community and have even birthed the term truth fascist in resulting infighting and cui bono. All right. Now, as you know, Bill, I'm not going to get. It's all right. I won't. I don't feel any animosity to you for disagreeing. You're entitled to do that. I don't agree with you. I'm not going to go out and call everyone in architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth shills. I'm not going to call you a shill either. Most of them are well-meaning people who may be, as I said in the review, suffering from groupthink or denial. I mean, I don't believe. I myself had this situation. I wrote about this when I wrote an article for Keeping the Paranormal Friendly about this. I turned away from the lie when I realised that 9/11 was the official story of 9/11 was wrong. I turned away from the lie, and I found the 9/11 Truth movement in UK 9/11 Truth movement, and I assumed because I turned away from a lie and I came across someone disagreeing with the lie that I found the truth. But it's not that simple. It's not that simple. I think some of the people in AET 9/11 have some questions to answer. Some of them are, I think they're being unfair to Dr. Judy Wood. They've been very unpleasant to her, actually. And her claims are not pseudoscientific. In fact, her claims, her book is the only scientific reinvestigation of 9/11, or any kind of investigation of 9/11 ever done. And this is a big subject, okay? It's a big subject I can't go into on this video, but I will. I'm hopefully getting Andrew Johnson on Panwo Radio soon, and we'll go through it on that. And I've done some video interviews with Andrew Johnson on Neil Geddes Ward's website, so they'll hopefully be available soon. Now, it has caused a rift in the truth community and birthed the term truth fascist. The term truth fascist was actually coined by Red Ice Radio because they had a big argument with Andrew Johnson. And this has resulted in infighting. And cui bono, who benefits? Yeah, I actually agree with Andrew Johnson, but I think he's been too hard on some people. I think you should give him a chance. I think you should, rather than having a go, it's sometimes best to give the information, then step back. Put your side of the cross, disagree, and then step back. But there was, he wrote an article saying that Red Ice did this rather not very good interview with Niels Harrit, which they didn't ask him the searching questions they should have done, and Andrew said that they therefore joined the disinformation brigade. I don't think Red Ice joined the disinformation brigade, but I think they made a mistake, and which they deserve to be admonished for. But I think they meant well, and they do mean well. They've had Andrew on their show too, after all, and Dr. Judy. It does the infighting. I try to avoid infighting. This is why I'm not going to get angry with you, and I feel no resentment towards you. I just disagree with you. Beetlejuice. Sorry about my spelling. My T keeps getting sticking. If this was an whodunit. Oh, I think that's because Beetlejuice was slightly incoherent a minute ago. It's all right. Not to worry, mate. Not to worry. Keith Zero. Wow, an emergency broadcast direct from Ben's bedsit. I'll need to subscribe, as I nearly missed this cracker. It's all right, Keith. It's there for you, repeated, to be enjoyed whenever you wish, as is this follow-up. Right, it's a 21 comment thread here. Anthony Barrett. Assassinate Hollande, WTF. Goodbye, Ben. You're not for real, mate, parroting the mainstream media. Please comment back. We know who did this. Terrorists created by our criminal governments. Comment how folks can take you serious, Ben. Peace and God bless. I've told you about 33 UFO sightings myself loads of times. I'm not one mentioned back. You're not for real. Horror, horrific, fear porn. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Right. I know, or Anthony, I have replied to you on your UFO sightings. The problem is I can't... I mean, a lot of people... I get a lot of correspondence and I can't necessarily... It takes a while sometimes to get back to everyone. But I have actually... I think I actually thumbed up and I reposted your 33 UFO sightings. I'm parroting the mainstream media because I said they were going to assassinate Hollande? Oh, come on. Did you actually watch all my video, Anthony? Really, honestly. My whole point of my video was to throw the mainstream media trash out the window. It's actually, this video and the one before it is actually there. But the point is that the mainstream media lied, and I'm exposing that. That's the and I'm illustrating how that lie happened and what it is. Now, because you're like that bloody Paul Price, you know. Oh, he said the word terrorist, therefore everything in this video is wrong. Parroting the man, assassinate Hollande. Well, look. President Hollande was at that. He was there. He was at the football match, and he was rushed out by his bodyguards. All right. I'm not going to tiptoe round you. I'm not going to use your own version of truth movement political correctness. Okay. Same, just like Paul Price, I'm not going to be dragged into that. Okay. I'm not going to be dragged into nitpicking and fussing over the minutiae of this issue. Oh, and speak of the devil, Paul Price, blatant shill. And Anthony Barrett says, who, me? And Paul Price says, no, him. Read my comments to him. Anthony, sorry, mate, peace and God bless. No need, I wasn't very clear. He says, he was, though. Oh, for goodness sake, Paul. What? Blatant shill. Oh, my goodness me. Here we go. He's another member of the shill squad now. I actually replied to him down here. I said, oh, dear, we have another member of the shill squad in our midst. So you've watched my video of the shill squad, I take it. and I said, Paul, yeah, you need me, right? You, Paul, what would you do if it wasn't for people like me, for you to feel superior to? If there weren't shills in the world, you, the great shill hunter, just like Kent Freedom Movement, the great, brave shill hunter is galloping to the rescue on his white charger. And he gets there and he suddenly realises, oh my goodness me, there's no shills, what am I going to do? Oh dear, I'm going to have to get in line with everyone else now, and no one's going to kiss my bottom anymore and think I'm wonderful. Oh dear. And Tom Stargazer says, okay fellas, let's not start sucking each other's dicks just yet. Sorry mate, God please and best. Cringeworthy bastards. I'll thumb that one up. Anthony Barrett, WTF, it's a known fact ISIS was behind the barrel bombs. They made their own YouTube videos of them firing them. Anthony, it would be helpful if you didn't write all in capitals and you use punctuation marks like full stops and commas and things. They made their own YouTube videos of them firing them, and the UN has backed this up. You're a shill as well. Oh my goodness, you're a shill as well, Tom, according to Anthony. Anthony says, who the fuck are you? Oh, oi, let's have no arguments on this comments thread, alright? If you start getting rude to people, I'll block you. Alright? Sorry, Tom, I had not read this yet. I didn't realise he's having a go at you like that. Paul Price, yet more ad hominem. Objective much. Paul Price, you're criticising Tom Stargazer for ad hominem. I mean, the word pot and kettle doesn't even come close. Alright, here we are. Paul Price. Oh, Tom Stargazer. Oh, good. Tom gives as good as he gets. He replies to Anthony when Anthony says, who the fuck are you? Your worst nightmare. Oh, nice one, Tom. Paul says, don't worry, clown. We're in good hands. Britain's MI5 involved themselves in pedo rings, ensuring members of parliament get off the hook to be blackmailed. America's CIA supplied the world with cocaine back in the 80s and now controls the poppy fields in Afghanistan. And Israeli Mossad blew up the USS Liberty belonging to their best buddies America. And these days like to dress up as Arabs and carry out shootings. Oh yes, and all three with a history in carrying out false flag. War is peace. What's your point, Paul? Apart from the fact you're being sarcastic, you're not saying anything I don't actually know. Ludacris says bye to Anthony Barrett. Anthony Barrett says, Tom Stargazer, you're threatening me now. Tom, Anthony, you poked the bear with a stick, and you're so rude to people, and he's giving you as good as you get, and now you're accusing him of threatening him. Don't start that like that bloody twat who was posting on my Keshi video. Oh, he's threatening me. He's threatening me. He wants to meet up with me, and actually, he wants to see. He doesn't want to have a man-to-man discussion. He's threatening me. Oh. Tom's the Torquemada. Caps lock and bum hurt. Oh yeah, that's right. Thomas de Torquemada, his caps lock's on. He's a bit slow. That's true, Barrett. Tom Stargazer says to Paul Price, your mind is made up on speculation, rhetoric, and connecting 30, 40-year-old events. Because this happened, this is happening. It's all what could possibly, and a big old grand conspiracy that joins together. Could be possible. What could be possible, and a big old grand conspiracy that joins together. The world is not that simple, I'm afraid. That's true. Tom Stargazer says to Paul Price again, there comes a point when you have to look at the results and conclusions of what you believe. Most of the time it's believed 24 to 72 hours after the events occur. On one hand, you give these intelligence and govs so much credit for these complex false flags. Then on the other hand, you dismiss the most basic mistakes. All the false flags for things that didn't happen. 9/11 was for oil, didn't happen. Read more. He carries on with the list of various false flag attacks. So there's a bit of an argument that's broken out on this thread. Xylomet. Oh, right. Good video, Ben. Thought-provoking. Thanks, X. What I say now is to show no solidarity to a flag that is still operating gladio-type stay-behind military infrastructure, political domination in countries all over Africa. They are under duress of the French, centuries after colonialism, and in other countries near that region. They're all part of the same nepotistic agenda. I believe they rejoined NATO. Actually, I found that out. Actually, France did actually come back into NATO. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, Xylomet says it's true. I mean, the names change, but the power behind the throne remains. Such as the time of Napoleon, for example, or even the King Louis the 16th, or whatever it was, who got his head cut off. There's evidence to suggest that the network was behind the French Revolution. So that I'd be very surprised actually if something resembling, just checking how much battery I've got, is not behind the French Revolution. It was behind the Operation Gladio. See, the same thing too. So a version of Operation Gladio is happening right now. Stephen Bamber. Another thing no one talks about is mind control, either by hypnotism and drugs, or like advanced technology and microchipping. Ooh, I do, Steve. Not in this video specifically, but I do in this video. And Xylomet says, in terms of the migrant crisis, I've heard the common hypothetical that goes, imagine if we went to the Middle East and wanted to build churches praying to Jesus, etc. But that's what we did for centuries, and even more violence than we are seeing. What we see now is just the overt religiosity, not on show. It's now simply a Eurocentric messianic complex. The military bases, industrial infrastructure, financial control buildings are the new churches. Yeah, I mean, Xylomet is actually carrying on pretty much from the comment he made before. The fact that for instance, the British, he's referring specifically, I think, to the British Empire, which was an overt front for a covert agenda. And with the British Empire, the sun eventually set on the British Empire, and what happened was it was replaced by other forms. I mean, a lot of the countries across Africa, especially, you can see this when they became independent, they were actually, very often they went straight into military coups, which then eventually put former agents of the colonial governments into power. I mean, a perfect example is Idi Amin, who was the president of Uganda and killed 200,000 of his own people. He was a former member of the colonial army, the British colonial army. Yeah. Anyway, thanks for all those questions. Well, most of them anyway. The nice ones and the decent ones. The ones that disagree, I don't have a problem with. The certain other people, well, as Millennial Woes would go when he does these thread dissections. Anyway, right. Thanks very much for, like I said, for watching this. Now, as far as the remains of this, as the remains of this subject go, in terms of this terrorist I'm going to say a terrorist attack, this false flag terrorist attack in Paris. Obviously now the French people are trying to pick themselves up and carry on. There's always developments. At the time that I record this, it's 1 week after this happened. By the time it's uploaded, it'll probably be close to the evening when the attack happened. So it's the 1 week. It's exactly 1 week after it happened. Some of the suspects, the named suspects, are still on the loose. There's more to. There's all kinds of things could happen. The French are now spoiling for a fight in the Middle East. Probably there will come a time when I'll have to make another video on this subject, almost certainly. But I've got no plans right now to make more videos on this subject. I'd actually quite like to move away from it. I have a lot of other videos I want to make, and other radio shows I want to produce, and other articles I want to write. And there's a lot more going on in the world besides what's happening in Paris right now, and I will be covering that as well. So I will only come back to this subject when it is necessary to. Not if, when it's necessary to. And I will only, I will not repeat myself too much on it. I'll simply refer to the previous films I made and suggest viewers read those. But it is going to come. It is going to start off again. There's going to be more, and there's going to be more information on this attack. And what's more, there could be further events like it. As I said on a radio show just a few weeks ago, 9/11, 7/7. Sooner or later, they're going to have another go. And I think it's a question. It is a question of when, not if, regarding whether there'll be another such event like what we've seen in Paris. It may be here in Britain. It may be in another country. But the conditions are being set up for it. Obviously, I hope that won't happen. I hope people will be aware enough to put a stop to it. But really, it is only awareness of these facts, the true nature behind false flag terrorism, that will stop it from happening. The government keep playing on this trick on us. They keep playing this trick on us because it keeps working. When it stops working, they'll stop doing it. Because it won't be any use anymore. So thanks for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity, Stop the New World Order.